They called her worthless. They treated her like a servant in her own home. James Sterling thought he was discarding a burden when he handed his wife divorce papers on their 3rd anniversary. He thought she was just a poor orphan, lucky to have married into his prestigious family. He was wrong. Dead wrong. He didn't know that the woman scrubbing his floors was actually the secret owner of Vance Global, the very conglomerate his failing company was desperate to partner with. When the truth comes out, it isn't just a revelation, it's a public execution of the Sterling family's pride. But by then, it was too late for apologies. Watch until the end to see exactly how the worthless wife bought their entire future and crushed it. The chandeliers in the Sterling family dining room were imported from Austria, costing more than most families earned in a decade. Beneath their crystal glow, the Sterling family sat like vultures in designer silk, picking at their food and at the woman sitting at the far end of the table. Sarah sat with her hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress she had bought at a department store 3 years ago. It was clean, pressed and modest, but against the backdrop of Beatrice Sterling's emerald necklace and Claire Sterling's custom Prada gown, Sarah looked like the help. "Sarah," Beatrice said, her voice sharp and brittle, like breaking glass. "I noticed the roast is a terrified shade of grey. Did you oversee the cook, or were you too busy daydreaming about your grim little past again?" James Sterling, sitting at the head of the table, didn't look up from his phone. He was a handsome man, with the sharp jawline and brooding eyes of a man born into money. But lately, the stress of Sterling Dynamics' falling stock prices had etched deep lines into his forehead. "I'm sorry, Beatrice," Sarah said softly. "I'll speak to the chef." "Don't bother," Claire sneered, swirling her wine. "You probably wouldn't know how to give an order if your life depended on it. Honestly, James, I don't know how you stand it. It's like living with a mute mouse." Sarah looked at her husband, waiting for him to defend her. It was their 3rd wedding anniversary. 3 years of silence. 3 years of hiding who she really was, because she wanted to be sure. She wanted to know that James loved her. Sarah Miller, the orphan with nothing, not Sarah Vance, the heiress to the Vance global empire. James finally put his phone down. He looked at Sarah, but his eyes held no warmth. There was only exhaustion and a cold, calculating resolve. "Mother is right, Sarah," James said. The room went silent. Sarah felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. "Right about what, James?" "This," James said. He reached under the table and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He slid it across the polished mahogany surface. It stopped inches from Sarah's untouched dinner plate. "What is this?" Sarah asked, though she already knew. She could see the legal letterhead of Sterling, Finch and Associates, peeking through the flap. "Divorce papers," James said flatly. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. I need a partner, a real partner, someone who understands the world I live in. Sterling Dynamics is in trouble. We need connections, capital, influence. You bring nothing to the table. You never have." Beatrice let out a cruel, delighted laugh. "Finally. Oh, James, I told you this day would come. I told you marrying a nobody was a mistake. I'm doing this for the family," James continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "I've met someone else, someone who can actually help me save the company. Jessica Thorne from the Thorne Group. We're compatible." Sarah stared at him. The betrayal wasn't just the divorce, it was the timing. He was doing this in front of his mother and sister, allowing them to witness her execution. "You're leaving me because I'm poor?" Sarah asked, her voice steady, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "It's not just about money," James sighed, rubbing his temples. It's about class. It's about fitting in. You've had 3 yours, Sarah. You still dress like a librarian. You don't know how to talk to our investors. You're an anchor dragging me down. I need to cut the line." Claire giggled. "Cut the line. Good one, James. Bye-bye, little mouse." Sarah slowly reached out and took the envelope. She didn't open it. She didn't cry. The tears she had shed over this man during the lonely nights of their marriage seemed to have dried up instantly, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. "You think I'm a burden," Sarah stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "A massive one," Beatrice interjected. "Now sign the papers, dear. We have a generous settlement prepared. $10,000. That should be enough to get you back to whatever trailer park James plucked you from." $10,000? Sarah nearly laughed. The interest on her savings account made $10,000 every hour. "I don't want your money," Sarah said quietly. James looked up, surprised. "Don't be stupid, Sarah. You have nothing." "I have my dignity," she said. She stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor, the only ungraceful sound she had made all night. "I'll sign, but I'm leaving tonight." "Good," James said, looking back at his phone. "The driver can take you to a motel." "I won't need your driver," Sarah said. She turned and walked out of the dining room. As she pushed through the heavy oak doors, she heard Beatrice say, "Make sure the silver is accounted for before she leaves, James. You never know with people like her." Sarah Vance didn't look back. She walked up the grand staircase to the guest room she had been sleeping in for the past 6 months, pulled out her old, battered suitcase, and began to pack. She didn't pack the jewelry James had bought her, cheap trinkets compared to what his mother wore. She didn't pack the clothes. She only packed the things she came with. She was done playing the role of the poor wife. The test was over. James Sterling had failed. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in the foyer. The house was quiet, save for the distant clinking of silverware from the dining room, where the Sterlings were enjoying dessert, celebrating the excision of the tumor from their family. Sarah placed the signed divorce papers on the hallway console table. Next to them, she placed her wedding ring. It was a modest diamond, one James had bought when the company was doing slightly better, but he had always looked at it with embarrassment. She pulled her phone from her pocket. It was an old model, one she used to maintain her cover. She powered it down, removed the SIM card, and snapped it in half. From the inner pocket of her coat, she produced a different phone. A sleek, black satellite phone that cost more than James's car. She dialed a single number. "Miss Vance?" A deep, gravelly voice answered on the first ring. It was Arthur, her head of security and personal assistant for over a decade. "It's done, Arthur," Sarah said. Her voice was unrecognizable from the meek woman who had sat at the dinner table minutes ago. It was authoritative, icy, and sharp. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am." Or, "Perhaps congratulations are in order." "Congratulations are definitely in order," Sarah said, looking around the foyer one last time. "Bring the car. The Phantom. I'm done hiding." "ETA 2 minutes, ma'am. I took the liberty of parking around the corner as soon as I saw the light in the guest bedroom turn off." Sarah stepped out into the cool autumn air. The Sterling estate was located in Greenwich, Connecticut, surrounded by high gates and manicured hedges. It was a cage wrapped in gold leaf. As she stood on the curb, the heavy iron gates swung open. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, pitch black with tinted windows, glided up the driveway. It didn't look like a car, it looked like a predator prowling through the dark. The driver's door opened and Arthur stepped out. He was a giant of a man, an ex-Royal Marine in a bespoke suit. He bowed his head slightly. "Miss Vance." "Hello, Arthur," she said, handing him her battered suitcase. "Burn this suitcase when we get to the penthouse. I don't want to see it again." "Understood." Just as Arthur opened the rear door for her, the front door of the house opened. James stepped out, holding a glass of scotch. He froze. He stared at the Rolls-Royce. He stared at Arthur, who looked like he could snap James in half with one hand. And then he stared at Sarah. For a second, the image didn't compute. His dowdy, quiet wife was standing next to a $500,000 car, her posture erect, her chin high. "Sarah," James called out, stumbling slightly. "Whose car is that?" Sarah turned. She didn't look down at him. She looked through him. "Goodbye, James. I hope Jessica Thorne is worth it." "Wait!" James walked down the steps, confusion warring with anger. "You can't just— Who is this guy? Have you been cheating on me? Is that it? You found some sugar daddy?" Arthur stiffened, his hand twitching toward his chest, but Sarah raised a hand to stop him. She walked a few steps toward James until she was face to face with him. The porch light illuminated his confused, arrogant face. "You really are blind, James," she whispered. "You spent 3 years looking for a savior for your company, and she was sleeping in your bed the whole time. You wanted a partner with capital? You had the sole owner of Vance Global making your coffee every morning." James blinked, letting out a short, incredulous laugh. "Vance Global? You? Sarah, you're delusional. The stress has finally cracked you. Go on, get in your boyfriend's car." Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Check the news tomorrow morning, James. I'm announcing the acquisition of the Majestic hotel chain. And, oh yes, I'm calling in the loans Sterling Dynamics owes to the bank. It turns out, my holding company bought your debt 3 months ago." James went pale. "What?" "I bought your debt," Sarah repeated, savoring the words. "I was going to forgive it. I was going to gift it to you for our anniversary. A clean slate. But now I think I'll collect." She turned, got into the back of the Rolls-Royce, and the door shut with a heavy, final thud. James stood on the driveway, the glass of scotch slipping from his fingers and shattering on the asphalt as the car drove away, leaving him in the dark. The next morning, the financial world of New York City woke up to an earthquake. The headline on the Wall Street Journal read, "The Return of the Queen. Sarah Vance reclaims control of Vance Global after 3-year sabbatical." Below the headline was a photo of Sarah, not the Sarah James knew, with messy hair and cheap sweaters, but Sarah Vance. She was wearing a white power suit, her hair slicked back, looking every inch the billionaire titan of industry she was. In the Sterling household, the morning was chaotic. "James!" Beatrice screamed from the living room. "James, get down here!" James stumbled down the stairs, nursing a hangover. He hadn't slept. He had spent the night convincing himself that Sarah's parting words were a hallucination, a desperate lie from a rejected woman. "What is it, Mother? Stop shouting!" Beatrice was standing in front of the television, her face the color of ash. On the screen, a news anchor was speaking excitedly. Shocking revelation that Sarah Vance, the reclusive heiress to the multi-billion-dollar Vance empire, has been living under an alias for the past 3 years. Sources say she was married to James Sterling, CEO of the struggling Sterling Dynamics, and the divorce was finalized only last night. The camera cut to a clip of Sarah leaving the Vance Global headquarters in Manhattan. Reporters were shouting questions. "Ms. Vance, is it true you worked as a housewife? Why the deception?" Sarah stopped and looked directly into the camera. Her eyes were like steel. "I wanted to see if love was real," she said into the microphone. "I found my answer. Now it's back to business." James fell onto the sofa. The room spun. "You—" Beatrice pointed a shaking finger at him. You divorced Sarah Vance? The Sarah Vance? The woman who could have bought and sold us 10 times over? I didn't know, James yelled, putting his head in his hands. She told me she was an orphan. She acted poor. She was testing you, you idiot, Claire shrieked, throwing a magazine at him. And you failed. We all failed. My God, I made her clean my shoes last week. I made Sarah Vance clean my mud-caked boots. The phone in James's pocket began to buzz. Then the landline rang. Then Claire's phone. James looked at his screen. It was his CFO. He answered it, his hand trembling. James, tell me you're watching the news. The CFO sounded like he was hyperventilating. I see it, Marcus. It's worse than the divorce, James. The bank just called. They've sold our primary credit line. $400 million in debt. It was transferred this morning to a holding company called Nemesis LLC. Nemesis? James whispered. It's a subsidiary of Vance Global, James. They've called the loan. They want immediate repayment. Full sum. Within 48 hours. If we don't pay, they seize the assets. They seize the factory, the patents, the headquarters, everything. James dropped the phone. Beatrice was sobbing now, clutching her pearls. We're ruined. She's going to destroy us. You have to fix this, James. You have to go to her. She hates me, Mother. I don't care, Beatrice screamed, her vanity stripped away by the terror of poverty. She was your wife yesterday. Go to her. Beg, grovel. Remind her of the good times. There were no good times, James shouted back. We treated her like garbage. Then lie, Beatrice hissed. Get in the car and drive to her office. Don't come back until you've fixed this. James grabbed his keys and ran out the door. He was in a panic. The reality of what he had lost was crashing down on him. Not just the money, but the realization that the quiet, supportive woman he had pushed away was actually the most powerful person he had ever met. And he had handed her the weapon to kill him. The Vance Global headquarters was not just a building. It was a monolith of steel and blue glass that pierced the Manhattan skyline, casting a long, imposing shadow over Fifth Avenue. For years, James had walked past it, admiring its architecture, dreaming of one day having a meeting in its penthouse. He never imagined he would be sprinting into its lobby, sweating through his shirt, desperate to beg his ex-wife for mercy. James burst through the revolving doors, the chaotic noise of the city instantly replaced by the hushed, expensive silence of the lobby. The floors were marble, white as bone. The air smelled of white tea and money. He marched straight to the reception desk, where a young woman with sharp glasses and an even sharper bob was typing furiously. "I'm here to see Sarah Vance," James demanded, slamming his hand on the marble counter. "Now!" The receptionist didn't flinch. She stopped typing, adjusted her glasses, and looked at him with the kind of polite disdain usually reserved for unruly children. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" "I don't need an appointment. I'm her husband, ex-husband. Just tell her James Sterling is here." "Ms. Vance is in a board meeting," the receptionist said smoothly. "Her schedule is fully booked until next November. If you'd like to leave a message, I can forward it to her administrative team." "I'm not leaving a message," James shouted. Heads turned. Security guards near the elevators shifted their weight, their hands hovering near their belts. "Call her. Tell her it's an emergency regarding Sterling Dynamics." The receptionist sighed, picked up the phone, and whispered something. A moment later, she hung up. "Ms. Vance says she is unaware of any emergency. She says if this is regarding the debt repayment, you should speak to the legal department on the 4th floor. They handle minor acquisitions." Minor acquisitions. The words hit James like a physical blow. His family's legacy, his life's work, was a minor acquisition to her. "I'm going up," James snarled. He turned toward the elevators. 2 large security guards stepped in his path. They were built like linebackers. "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave." James was about to scream, to cause a scene that would end up on page 6, when the elevator pinged. The doors slid open, and a man walked out. It was Sebastian Cole. James froze. Sebastian Cole was the CEO of Cole Industries, a direct competitor to Sterling Dynamics, and one of the most ruthless sharks in New York. He was everything James wanted to be: richer, smarter, and untouched by scandal. "James," Sebastian said, a smirk playing on his lips. He adjusted his silk tie. "Rough morning?" "What are you doing here, Sebastian?" James asked, his voice tight. "Just finished a breakfast meeting with Sarah," Sebastian said, saying her name with a familiarity that made James's stomach churn. "We're discussing a merger of our tech divisions. Brilliant woman. Funny, she never mentioned she was married to you. She just said she was detaching some dead weight." Sebastian patted James on the shoulder as he walked past. "Good luck with the bankruptcy, old sport." James watched him leave, rage boiling in his veins. She was already replacing him. Not romantically, perhaps, but professionally. Which hurt more. She was giving his competitor the deals he needed. "Let him up," a voice came over the intercom at the security desk. It was Arthur's voice. "Miss Vance has 5 minutes." The guard stepped aside. James fixed his jacket, trying to regain a shred of dignity, and stepped into the elevator. The ride to the 90th floor took 40 seconds, but it felt like 40 years. His ears popped. His heart raced. He rehearsed his lines. "I'm sorry. I was a fool. Let's start over. I love you." The doors opened directly into a sprawling office that spanned the entire floor. It was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Central Park. Modern art that cost millions hung on the walls. Sarah sat behind a massive desk made of reclaimed obsidian wood. She wasn't looking at him. She was reviewing a document, a gold fountain pen in her hand. 3 minutes, James," she said, without looking up. The clock started when the doors opened. James walked across the long room, his footsteps echoing. He stopped in front of the desk. She looked radiant. Powerful. The mousy, grey-clad woman he had ignored for 3 years was gone. In her place was a queen on her throne. "Sarah," he started, his voice cracking, "please, we need to talk." "We are talking," she said, finally looking at him. Her eyes were cold, devoid of the adoration he was used to. "You have 2 minutes and 40 seconds. "Why didn't you tell me?" James asked. "Why the games? If I had known who you were—" "If you had known," Sarah cut him off, "you would have loved my money, not me." "That was the point, James. I wanted to see if you were capable of loving Sarah Miller, the girl with nothing. You gave me your answer last night." "I was under pressure," James pleaded. "The company is failing. My mother. You know how she is. I did it for the family. Our family." "Don't," Sarah said sharply. "Don't insult my intelligence. You did it because you were weak. You let your mother and sister abuse me for 3 years. You let them treat me like a servant. And you never defended me. Not once. Do you remember my birthday last year?" James blinked. He racked his brain. "We went to dinner." "No," Sarah said. "You went to a gala with your sister. You left me at home to iron your tuxedo. You forgot. I spent my birthday eating a sandwich in the kitchen while your mother criticized my cleaning." James swallowed hard. He remembered now. "I can make it up to you. Sarah, cancel the debt recall. Please. It will destroy us. Sterling Dynamics has been in my family for 4 generations. Sarah leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. "And you ran it into the ground in 4 years. You're a bad businessman, James. You're emotional. You're easily manipulated. And you have poor judgment in character. I'm your husband, ex-husband, she corrected. And regarding the debt, I'm not doing this out of spite, James. It's strictly business. Sterling Dynamics has valuable patents. The management is the problem. I'm simply removing the problem. You're stealing my company, James whispered. I'm saving it, Sarah replied. From you. What about Jessica? James blurted out. Jessica Thorne. She's going to invest. She'll save me. You think you're the only one with money? Sarah let out a soft, genuine laugh. It was a terrifying sound. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Arthur? Send in the guest. A side door opened. James turned, expecting to see a lawyer. Instead, Jessica Thorne walked in. James felt a wave of relief. Jessica, thank God. Tell her about our deal. The merger. Jessica Thorne, a tall, striking blonde in a red dress, didn't look at James. She walked past him and sat in the chair opposite Sarah. Hello, Sarah, Jessica said, her voice respectful. Thank you for seeing me. Jessica, Sarah nodded. James seems to think you're here to save him. Jessica finally turned to James. Her expression was one of pity mixed with amusement. Oh, James, you didn't really think the Thorne Group was going to invest in a sinking ship, did you? But last night, you said, James stammered. I said what I needed to say to get the intel, Jessica said coolly. Sarah hired me 6 months ago. I'm a consultant for Vance Global. My job was to audit Sterling Dynamics from the inside. The easiest way to get close to the CEO was, well, you made it very easy, James. You were so desperate for validation. James felt the room spin. You were working for her. The whole time. I wanted to know if the company was worth acquiring, Sarah explained, her voice calm. Jessica's report was quite thorough. She noted that while the financials were a disaster, the CEO was distracted, incompetent and disloyal. It made the decision to buy your debt much easier. James fell to his knees. It was a theatrical, desperate gesture, but he had nothing left. The two women looked down at him. Sarah, please, he wept. I'll do anything. I'll leave the company. I'll give you the house. Just don't bankrupt the family. My mother. This will kill her. Sarah stood up. She walked around the desk and stood over him. Your mother is a survivor, James. She'll adapt, just like I had to adapt when she made me scrub the floors. Sarah reached down. For a second, James thought she was going to touch his shoulder to offer comfort. Instead, she checked her watch. Time's up. She looked at the door. Arthur, remove Mr. Sterling and ensure his access pass is revoked. If he returns, call the police. Arthur appeared in the doorway, his massive frame blocking the light. He grabbed James by the arm and hauled him up like a rag doll. No! Sarah! You can't do this! James screamed as he was dragged toward the elevator. It's already done, Sarah said, turning her back on him to look out the window at the city she now owned. As the elevator doors closed on James's screaming face, Jessica Thorne turned to Sarah. Was that hard? Jessica asked quietly. Sarah stared at the skyline. The hardest part was realizing I wasted 3 years waiting for him to be a man he never was. What now? Jessica asked. Sarah turned, her eyes flashing with a dangerous light. Now we go to the Hamptons. It's time I paid a visit to my mother-in-law. I believe she has some of my silverware. The drive to the Hamptons usually took 2 hours, but in the back of the Phantom with a police escort, a perk of being the state's largest donor to the police fund, Sarah made it in 90 minutes. She wasn't going alone. Behind her, Rolls-Royce was a caravan of black SUVs. They contained her legal team, her asset recovery specialists, and a moving crew. James had called his mother, of course. Sarah knew this because she had tapped the Sterling landline hours ago. She wanted to hear the panic. When the convoy pulled up to the Sterling summer estate, a sprawling Victorian mansion overlooking the ocean, the gates were locked. Arthur turned from the front seat. "Gates are secured, Ma'am. Shall we buzz?" "Ram them," Sarah said, not looking up from her tablet. "With pleasure." The lead SUV, equipped with a reinforced bull bar, accelerated. With a screech of metal and a thunderous crash, the iron gates of the Sterling estate were torn from their hinges. The convoy rolled through the debris, crunching over the gravel driveway. They parked in a semicircle around the front entrance. Sarah stepped out. She had changed from her business suit into something more intimidating. A black trench coat, dark sunglasses, and high-heeled boots that clicked ominously on the pavement. Before she reached the stairs, the front door flew open. Beatrice Sterling stood there, wearing a silk dressing gown, clutching a martini glass. She looked disheveled, her face a mask of fury and fear. Claire stood behind her, holding a phone, recording. "Get off my property!" Beatrice shrieked. "I've called the police. You can't just barge in here." Sarah stopped at the bottom of the stairs. She removed her sunglasses slowly. "Actually, Beatrice, I can," Sarah said, her voice projecting clearly over the wind. "According to the foreclosure notice filed an hour ago, this isn't your property anymore. It belongs to Nemesis LLC, which means it belongs to me." "Liar!" Claire yelled, zooming in with her phone. "Your harassment. I'm live streaming this. Everyone is going to see what a psycho you are." "Hello, Internet," Sarah said, waving at the phone. "I hope you're enjoying the show. Claire, while you're streaming, you might want to explain why you're wearing the diamond earrings I reported missing 2 months ago." Claire's hand flew to her ear. James gave me these." "He gave you my grandmother's heirloom earrings?" Sarah asked, taking a step up. "Stolen property, Claire. That's a felony." "Arthur?" Arthur stepped forward, holding a thick binder. "We have the insurance appraisals and photos proving ownership, Ma'am. Police are en route to facilitate the eviction." Beatrice stumbled back. "Eviction? You can't evict us. We've lived here for 30 years. "And you haven't paid the mortgage in 2, Sarah said cold. "James took out a second mortgage to cover the company's losses. He defaulted. I bought the note. You have 1 hour to vacate the premises." 1 hour? Beatrice gasped. "But where will we go?" "I hear the Motel 6 on the highway has vacancies," Sarah said. "It's clean, modest. You'll hate it." Sarah walked past them, brushing shoulders with Beatrice as she entered the house. The interior was just as she remembered, filled with gaudy portraits of ancestors who would be ashamed of their descendants. "Start tagging," Sarah ordered her team. A dozen men and women in suits swarmed the house. They began placing neon red stickers on paintings, sculptures, and furniture. "Asset seized, asset seized, asset seized." Beatrice followed Sarah into the hallway, hyperventilating. "Sarah, please, be reasonable. We're family." "Family?" Sarah spun around. "Family doesn't make their daughter-in-law sleep in the guest room because her snoring offends the dogs. Family doesn't mock their son's wife for buying clothes at a discount store while spending $5,000 on a handbag. You never considered me family, Beatrice. I was staff." "I was trying to teach you," Beatrice cried, "to mold you into a Sterling." "And you succeeded," Sarah said. "You taught me that the Sterlings are cruel, shallow, and morally bankrupt. I learned the lesson well." There was a commotion at the door. A car had screeched to a halt outside. James ran in, breathless, his suit rumpled. "Stop!" he yelled. "Everyone stop!" He ran to his mother, who collapsed into his arms. James, do something, Beatrice wailed. She's taking the Renoir. She's taking the piano. James looked at Sarah. For the first time, there was real fear in his eyes. He looked around at the movers, the security, the red stickers claiming his childhood home. Is this what you want? James asked quietly. Revenge? It's not revenge, James, Sarah said, picking up a crystal vase, the one Beatrice had once screamed at her for dusting incorrectly. She inspected it, then deliberately let it slip from her fingers. It shattered into 1,000 pieces on the hardwood floor. Oops, Sarah said, her face blank. It's justice. You broke me, James, piece by piece. For 3 years, I'm just returning the favor. I can fight this, James said, trying to summon some bravado. I'll get lawyers. I'll sue you for fraud. With what money? Sarah asked. I froze your personal accounts 20 minutes ago. The board of Sterling Dynamics just voted to oust you as CEO. You're unemployed, homeless, and broke. James stared at her. You took the company. I installed a new CEO, Sarah said. Someone competent. Someone who values the workers, not just the stock price. Who? James whispered. Sarah smiled. Me. The room went silent. But, Sarah continued, I am a merciful woman. I'm willing to make a deal. James's head snapped up. A deal? Anything. I will let you keep the apartment in the city, Sarah said. It's small, but it's paid for, and I will give you a stipend. 50,000 a year. 50,000, Beatrice gasped. That won't even cover my club membership. Then cancel the membership, Sarah snapped. Here are the terms. You sign over your remaining shares in Sterling Dynamics to me. You issue a public apology admitting to your financial mismanagement. And, Beatrice. Sarah turned to the older woman. You will apologize to me. On your knees. The air left the room. Never, Beatrice hissed. I would rather die. Then get out, Sarah said, and sleep on the street, because I will make sure no bank in this country lends you a dime. I will blackball you from every social club, every charity gala, every restaurant in New York. You will be pariahs. Beatrice looked at James. James looked at his feet. Mother, James whispered. Please, we have nowhere to go. Beatrice trembled. She looked at the red stickers. She looked at her sobbing daughter. She looked at the woman she had tormented for years. Slowly, painfully, Beatrice Sterling lowered herself to the floor. Her knees hit the wood with a thud. She bowed her head. I'm sorry, she whispered. Louder, Sarah said. I can't hear you over the sound of your ego breaking. I'm sorry, Beatrice screamed, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry I treated you like dirt. I'm sorry I'm a horrible woman. Are you happy now? Sarah looked down at them. She felt nothing. No joy, no triumph, just a hollow sense of closure. No, Sarah said softly. I'm not happy, but I am free. She stepped over the shattered vase. Arthur, give them the keys to the apartment. Everyone else, finish clearing the house. I want this place empty by sundown. Sarah walked out the front door, leaving the Sterlings kneeling in the ruins of their life. New York City in January was a beast of a different color. The romance of the holidays had faded, replaced by gray slush on the sidewalks, and a biting wind that cut through the thickest coats. For Sarah Vance, winter was just another season to conquer. From her office on the 90th floor, the snow swirling around the skyscrapers looked like confetti celebrating her continued ascent. In the month since the divorce, she had not only stabilized Sterling Dynamics, but turned it into the crown jewel of her portfolio. She had ruthlessly cut the dead weight, modernized the factories, and launched a green energy initiative that had Wall Street buzzing. But success, she was learning, was a cold bedfellow. She sat at her desk, staring at a report that should have made her happy. Profits were up 200%, but the silence in her penthouse was deafening. She had won. She had crushed the people who hurt her. Yet the victory felt hollow, like eating ash. "Ms. Vance?" Sarah looked up. Arthur was standing in the doorway, brushing snowflakes from his shoulders. "What is it, Arthur?" "It's the monthly report on the tenants in Queens," Arthur said, placing a thin file on her desk. Sarah hesitated. She shouldn't look. She should let them rot. But curiosity, a dark and addictive thing, made her open the folder. Attached was a photo taken from a distance. It showed James Sterling. He looked older, thinner. He was wearing a cheap parka, waiting at a bus stop. The arrogance that used to define his posture was gone, replaced by a slump of defeat. "He's working double shifts," Arthur reported neutrally, bartending at a dive in Hell's Kitchen. "The mother Beatrice has been trying to sell her social connections, but no one is buying. She's currently attempting to sue her dry cleaner for ruining a dress that's 10 years old." Sarah closed the file, feeling a mix of pity and satisfaction. "And Claire?" "She tried to launch a lifestyle blog," Arthur said, a hint of disgust in his voice. "The internet bullied her off the platform within a week. They are struggling, Mum." "Good," Sarah said. But she didn't feel good. "Burn the file." "There is one more thing," Arthur said, his tone shifting to something sharper. "Security flagged a meeting yesterday afternoon. James Sterling met with Sebastian Cole." Sarah's eyes snapped up. Sebastian Cole was the CEO of Cole Industries, a direct competitor and a shark known for playing dirty. Why would Cole meet with a disgraced bartender? "We don't know," Arthur admitted. "They met in a park. No audio, but Cole handed Sterling an envelope." Sarah stood up, walking to the window. If Sebastian was talking to James, it wasn't out of charity. It was sabotage. James had access to nothing, unless he still remembered the old override codes for the factory servers. "Increase security at the R&D facility," Sarah ordered, her voice icy. "And put a tail on James. If he steps 1 foot near my company, I want him arrested." 5 miles away, in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, the radiator clanked loudly, a metallic rhythm to the Sterling family's misery. Beatrice sat at the small Formica kitchen table, shivering in 3 sweaters. "It's freezing," she moaned. "James, hit it again. Make it work." James was lying on the lumpy sofa, staring at the cracked ceiling. His hands were raw and chapped from washing glasses in bleach water for 10 hours straight. "It's not broken, Mother. The landlord turns the heat down during the day to save money." "We are living like animals," Beatrice gasped. "I am a Sterling. I should not be freezing in Queens." The front door banged open. Claire stomped in, throwing her knockoff handbag onto the floor. She was crying. "I hate them," she screamed. "I went to the boutique for the sales associate job. The manager recognized me from the video. She laughed at me. 'Mother?' She said she doesn't hire entitled brats and threatened to call security." James sat up, rubbing his face. "We need money for rent, Claire. You have to find something. Fast food, cleaning, anything." "I don't serve people," Claire shrieked. "You're nobody now," James snapped, his temper flaring. "We're all nobody. The sooner you accept that, the easier it gets." He stood up and grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" Beatrice asked sharply. "You have work tonight?" "No," James said, touching the inside pocket of his coat. "I have a decision to make." The envelope Sebastian Cole had given him was heavy in his pocket. It contained $10,000 in cash and a USB drive. All James had to do was plug the drive into a specific server at the old Sterling Dynamics factory. Sebastian had promised him another 100,000 once the virus was uploaded. It was enough money to move them to a warmer apartment, enough to get Beatrice off his back, enough to start over. But it meant betraying Sarah. Again, James walked out into the cold, the wind biting at his exposed neck. He walked for hours, his feet numb, his mind a battlefield. He remembered the look in Sarah's eyes the day she evicted them. It wasn't hate. It was disappointment. He found himself standing in front of the Sterling Dynamics factory in Brooklyn. It used to be his kingdom. Now, the Vance Global logo was emblazoned above the gates, glowing blue in the twilight. He fingered the USB drive. He knew the back entrance. It would be so easy. James took a step toward the gate. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," a voice said from the shadows. James froze. He turned to see Arthur stepping out from behind a parked truck. 2 other men, dressed in tactical gear, flanked him. "Arthur," James said, raising his hands. "Ms. Vance predicted you'd be here," Arthur said, his hand resting on a taser. "Sebastian Cole is predictable. And you? You're desperate." James pulled the envelope out of his pocket. "He gave this to me. He wants me to upload a virus to destroy the prototype data." Arthur stared at the envelope. "And were you going to do it?" James looked at the factory. He thought about the heat in the apartment. He thought about his mother's shivering. Then he thought about Sarah, the woman who had supported him for 3 years while he treated her like a ghost. "No," James said softly. He tossed the envelope to Arthur. "I was coming to turn it in. I wanted to warn her." Arthur caught the envelope. He checked the contents, the cash, the drive. He looked back at James, surprised. "A likely story." "It's the truth," James said. "Tell her I'm not the man she thinks I am. Not anymore." "I'll tell her you were caught trespassing," Arthur said coldly. "Get out of here, James." James turned and walked away, back into the dark. He had done the right thing. So why did he feel like he had just lost everything all over again? The next morning, the boardroom of Vance Global was tense. Sarah sat at the head of the table. To her right sat her legal team. To her left, the board of directors. And at the far end, handcuffed and looking furious, sat Sebastian Cole. "This is an outrage," Sebastian shouted. "You can't hold me here." "I have the USB drive you gave to my ex-husband," Sarah said calmly, "and I have audio recordings of your meeting. My security team is very thorough." Sebastian went pale. "James, that rat, he set me up." "Actually," Sarah said, glancing at Arthur, "he didn't. He refused your offer. He turned the evidence over to my head of security voluntarily." Sarah slid a confession document down the table. "Sign it, Sebastian. Admit to corporate espionage and resign, or I release the audio to the FBI." Sebastian realized he was beaten. He signed the paper with a shaking hand. As the police arrived to escort Sebastian away, Sarah felt a strange sensation in her chest. It wasn't triumph. It was confusion. "Arthur?" she said, once the room cleared. "James. He really didn't try to use the drive." "No," Arthur said. He handed it over. He walked away from $100,000. Sarah drummed her fingers on the obsidian desk. "Why?" "Perhaps," Arthur suggested, "he is trying to atone. Trauma changes people, Sarah. Sometimes it just wakes them up." Sarah stood up. She walked to the window. The snow was falling harder now. "Find out where he's working," Sarah said. "The bar in Hell's Kitchen?" "Yes," Sarah said. "I think I need a drink." The Rusty Anchor was not the kind of place Sarah Vance usually frequented. The floor was sticky, and the air smelled of stale grease. Sarah walked in, wearing a hooded coat, and sat in the darkest corner booth. She saw him immediately. James was behind the bar, scrubbing the counter. He looked exhausted. A group of rowdy men were sitting at the bar, laughing loudly. "Hey, Jimmy!" one yelled. "Another round! And hurry up, rich boy!" James flinched but nodded. "Coming right up." "Did you hear that?" The man laughed to his friends. "The little sterling heir called me sir. Hey, Jimmy, catch!" The man threw a crumpled dollar bill at James. It hit him in the chest and fell into a puddle of spilled beer. "Leave it alone," James mumbled. "Dance for it," the man sneered. "Pick it up, boy." James didn't argue. He didn't fight. He just reached down, picked up the wet dollar, and put it in the tip jar. "Thank you," he said quietly. Sarah felt a lump in her throat. The James she knew would have sneered. This James just took the abuse with a painful humility. She waited until the bar cleared out at 2 a.m. As James wiped down the last table, Sarah lowered her hood and walked to the bar. "Sarah?" James froze. He looked around frantically. "What are you doing here? Did the drive work? I mean, did Arthur give it to you?" "He did," Sarah said. "You saved the company. Sebastian Cole is in custody." James let out a long breath, slumping against the back bar. "Good. That's good." "Why did you do it?" Sarah asked. "He offered you a fortune. You need money." James laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Yeah, I need money. But the company belonged to you, and I've taken enough from you." He avoided her gaze, scrubbing a spot on the counter that was already clean. "I had a lot of time to think, Sarah, about the last 3 years. I thought I was the prize, you know? The sterling heir. And you were just lucky to have me." He shook his head. "I was the lucky one. And I was too stupid to see it until I watched you drive away. You looked free, and I realized I was the cage." Sarah remained silent. "I don't expect you to forgive me," James continued, "but I wanted you to know that I'm not going to hurt you again. I'm just going to try to survive." He looked at the clock. "We're closing. You shouldn't be here." Sarah reached into her purse. She pulled out a business card. It wasn't her personal card, but one for a mid-level logistics manager at Vance Global. She slid it across the counter. "The warehouse in New Jersey needs a shift supervisor," Sarah said. "It pays a living wage, benefits. It's hard work, but it's honest." James stared at the card like it was a lifeline. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance," Sarah said. "Don't make me regret it." "And my family?" James asked. "Beatrice and Claire are on their own," Sarah said firmly. "You are the only one who showed integrity tonight. If you take the job, you can support them. But I won't help them directly. They need to learn, just like you did." James picked up the card. His hand was shaking. "Thank you," he whispered. "Sarah, Don't," she stopped him. "Don't promise me anything. Just show up on Monday at 6 a.m. She turned to leave, pausing at the door. "And James?" "Yes?" "Wear a warmer coat," she said. She walked out into the snow. The wind was still cold, but for the first time in months, the ice around her heart felt like it was finally beginning to crack. 18 months had transformed James Sterling. The man who once wore Italian silk now wore a high-visibility vest in a warehouse in New Jersey. He had worked his way up from the loading dock to floor manager, using his wages to support his mother and sister in a cramped townhouse. While James found dignity in the labor, Beatrice and Claire found only misery. The tension exploded when Sarah announced the Future of Industry Gala, hosted at the renovated Sterling factory. "We are going," Beatrice declared, clutching her fake pearls. "We will make a scene. She'll pay us millions just to make us go away." "You will do no such thing," James snapped, his voice hard. "I'm working security tonight. If you show up, I will have you arrested." Sarah didn't steal the company, Mother. She saved it from me. He left them fuming, hoping his warning had stuck. It hadn't. The gala was a spectacle of neon and glass. Sarah stood on the mezzanine, watching the elite of New York celebrate her success. But the celebration was shattered by a screech of feedback. Beatrice and Claire had bribed their way in. Beatrice stood on the main stage, screaming into a microphone about thieves, while Claire live-streamed the chaos, holding a lighter near the dry pampas grass decorations. "I'll burn it down!" Claire screamed, waving the flame. James sprinted from his post. He vaulted onto the stage, facing the cameras and his deranged family. "Stop!" he yelled, his voice echoing through the hall. "The truth is, I was a coward. Sarah is the hero of this story, not the villain. I let you abuse her, Mother, and I'm done covering for you." Shocked by his betrayal, Claire threw her hands up. The lighter slipped. It hit the dried grass, and the stage erupted in an inferno. The crowd stampeded. Claire fled instantly, leaving her mother paralyzed by terror as the flames circled her. "James!" Beatrice screamed. While the world ran away, James ran into the fire. He tackled his mother, shoving her off the stage into the arms of a guard. But as he turned to escape, a burning lighting rig collapsed, crushing his leg and pinning him in the blaze. "James!" Sarah screamed from the balcony. Ignoring Arthur's protests, she ripped her silver gown and ran into the smoke. She and Arthur heaved the burning beam off James's shattered leg, dragging him to safety seconds before the stage collapsed. Outside, amidst the flashing lights of ambulances, the reckoning arrived. Claire was handcuffed, screaming as police arrested her for arson. Beatrice sat on the curb, weeping. Sarah approached the ambulance where James lay, battered but alive. She looked at Beatrice with eyes of steel. "I won't press charges against you, Beatrice, for James's sake. But you are moving to a retirement home in Florida. You are cut off. You almost killed him for your pride." Beatrice, broken and defeated, was led away. James looked up at Sarah, his face smeared with soot. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I understand if I'm fired." "You're not fired," Sarah said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You ran into the fire. You finally stood up. I'm making you director of logistics. You've earned it, James." 3 years later, New York City glittered in the winter sun. Sarah Vance sat in her office, looking at a report from her director of operations. James walked with a slight limp now, a permanent reminder of the night he found his soul. But he was the most respected man in the company. He was no longer her husband, but he was her most trusted ally. He had found happiness with a schoolteacher named Lily, a life far removed from the toxicity of the Sterlings. Sarah texted him, "Good work on the quarterly review. See you at the barbecue." James replied, "Wouldn't miss it." Sarah put her phone down and smiled at the skyline. They had both walked through the fire. They had been burned, broken, and forged anew. The mouse had become a queen, and the prodigal son had finally become a man. What a journey! James Sterling learned the hard way that true worth isn't found in a bank account, but in character. Sarah Vance proved that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success and grace. James lost his billions, but he found his soul in a warehouse. Beatrice and Claire, well, karma has a way of finding everyone eventually. This story reminds us to never judge a book by its cover, and to treat everyone with respect, because you never know who is really holding the keys to the castle. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of drama and redemption, please smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. What would you have done if you were Sarah? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.